Welcome to the story of our COVID-19 road trip of Iceland in 2020. The idea of Iceland came about in September 2019 off the back of a junk email which included trips to Iceland, the most sparsely populated country in Europe with a population of just 360,000. Our idea was to take the essential concept of the usual 10-day road trip of the 1,300 kilometre ring road, but make it longer, see more, and hunt out ways to see places you didn't see on a 10-day tour. Thus was born a 16-day trip going further northwest, northeast, and into the centre of Iceland. So in October 2019, all of the accommodation, flights and car hire were booked. Now, just sit back and wait 9 months. And then came COVID-19. On the 3rd of July, the British Foreign Office removed Iceland from the no-go areas, giving us 21 days to refine the plan. After checking the flights were still on, we emailed all the accommodation to check they were still all open. And why wouldn't they be? They had only had 10 COVID deaths in Iceland.
But first, a bit about Iceland. With an area of 103,000 square kilometres, it is slightly smaller than England. Despite its high latitude, the mainland is just outside the Arctic Circle. Norwegians first settled in Iceland around 800 AD. In the 1200s, it came under Norwegian rule, then under Danish rule in the 1500s. In 1918, it became an independent sovereign state that freely associated to Denmark. Finally, in 1944, following a referendum, the union with Denmark was abolished and Iceland became the Republic of Iceland.
So onward with our road trip. It's just a 2.5 hour flight and Iceland is 1 hour behind the UK as they follow GMT all year. Upon arrival, we had the COVID tests we'd pre-booked. We had already downloaded the tracing app to allow us to be alerted with the results, which came through within 6 hours as negative. Good. We weren't going to spend the holiday in quarantine. We picked up our Highland-suitable 4x4 Suzuki Vitara and off we went. Glean's waterfall, the second highest waterfall in Iceland, with a cascade of 198 metres was our first stop on our way to the northwest of Iceland. It was long regarded as the tallest until being surpassed in 2011 when a 240 metre waterfall became visible when a glacier started melting. Probably 20 cars in the car park, so we weren't alone. With 2 unsigned paths to choose from, we took, as it turned out, the return path, so we did the walk in reverse. Because we'd researched the route, we took our wet shoes for the river crossing above the waterfall. Our accommodation was actually a hostel that occupied several buildings in the village, and ours looked like a converted warehouse right on the harbour front. This is the view from our room, Kirkjuveld Mountain. Kirkjuveldvoss and Kirkjuveld was my next morning's destination run, Church Mountain Falls, with the 460 metre Church Mountain in the background. Allegedly listed as one of the top 10 most beautiful mountains in the world, it can be seen in the Game of Thrones as Arrowhead Mountain. The waterfall and the mountain are Iceland's most photographed mountain.
Day 2 was a tour of Snæfellsjökull Peninsula. Quite compact, so little driving. One of the dullest days we experienced of the whole trip, and certainly one of the windiest. You hoped the wind didn't change strength as you passed oncoming cars, as all roads were only 3 feet wider than 2 cars, and then a drop. The 6-metre 1931 Svörtuloft lighthouse was spotted on the map, and it gave me my first experience of a gravel road. Crater of Saxhóll was next, just around the corner. Only 45 metres high, but it does stand above the lava fields. and if it had been a clear day, we'd have seen the Snæfellsjökull Glacier, known for its crater being the entrance to the centre of the Earth in Jules Verne's 1864 sci-fi novel Journey to the Centre of the Earth. The metal staircase to the top, like many structures in Iceland, has won an award. Stuðlagil Black Beach, once home to 60 fishing boats, but today the bay is uninhabited. On the beach there are remains of the Grimsby fishing trawler Epine that was shipwrecked here in 1948. We even had time for a pebble tower competition. Then, to stretch our legs, we moved on to Arnastapi, where we find this statue, with an unpronounceable name, the guardian spirit of the peninsula. Having walked the wrong way along the cliff top, we eventually found the Hellnar sea arch we were looking for. The drive back took us over the top up to 800 metres near the glacier on our first Highland road, the 19-kilometre F570. Never got too technical or steep, and we saw no other cars. These Highland roads are restricted to 4x4s because two-wheel drive cars will struggle or not make it, and hence illegal for them to try.
Day 3 saw us head further away from the circle, over to the West Fjords, starting with a 2.5-hour crossing of the Breiðafjörður Fjord. Having disembarked from the sparsely populated ferry at noon, we set off to our most westerly point, knowing we had 250 kilometres to travel that afternoon. Unexpectedly, we came across Gardar BA 64, the oldest steel ship from Iceland. It was built in 1912 by a Norwegian shipyard and was a state-of-the-art whaling vessel. In 1981, the ship was deliberately beached at Patreksfjörður. Then on to Reynisfjara, Red Sand Beach, a 10-kilometre red sand beach that is unusual in Iceland, as most beaches are black. Access is via the 10-kilometre gravel 614 road that goes up to a pass and then steeply down the other side. Roads drove this bit, but the unprotected drops, steep road, hairpin, not to mention the broken down car parked on the edge and the oncoming traffic made for a stressful descent for both driver and passenger. I'd met Arctic terns on my run already. They swoop down to scare you away from their nests. I'd even had one that hit my head whilst out running. The quickest route from the south to the north coast of the peninsula was the F66, 25 kilometres of Highland road, and one of the attractions of Iceland's road trip for me. After almost driving into someone's garden at the start, we had the road to ourselves, and despite various websites saying it takes 2 to 3 hours, we were over in an hour. Our home for 2 nights was the country hotel Heydalur, a converted dairy farm located at the bottom of the fjord Untitled. A favourite for us was at Ullamunta Hot Pot located over the river from the hotel. Going at 7 a.m. in the morning, and we had it all to ourselves. There was also a bigger naturally fed hot pool in the hotel grounds and a cooler swimming pool inside the greenhouse. Signs told you not to eat the produce.
Day 4 was to be our biggest driving day, 430 kilometres, all to see one waterfall. Doesn't look much on the map, but it was a there and back route. On the way we stopped at this little museum at Glacier with a cafe that we found on the internet. The cafe is in a turf farmhouse, the birthplace of Jon Sverrisson, who campaigned for his country's independence from Denmark. His birthday is Iceland's national day. Later in 2020, the mountain pass to get here will be bypassed by a tunnel through the mountain. This may make this part of Iceland more accessible, however we prefer the adventure of highland and gravel roads. Eventually, we reached Dynjandey waterfall. In 200 kilometres, we'd seen just 3 cars going our way. This waterfall is too far out for most tourists, definitely not on the usual round Iceland itinerary. It's actually 7 waterfalls, falling around 200 metres. Highest, Diande is 100 metre high, 30 metres wide at the top and 60 metres at the bottom.
Day 5 was our second longest driving day, heading for the golden circle of must-see Iceland attractions. First stop was Fornafossa lava falls, 900 metres long, with the water spilling out of the lava plateau. Just upstream is Barnafoss Children's Falls, which legend has it takes its name from 2 children who fell into the waterfall at Christmas time. The direct route for us from here was the Kaldidalur route, Road 550. This is one of 3 historic routes to get the northern people to Thingvellir, our next stop. At 40 kilometres, it was a smooth drive in sunshine, with Iceland's second largest glacier to the east. There were just a few cars on the road. Thingvellir National Park, the site of the annual Parliament of Iceland from 930 AD to 1798 AD, when the Parliament moved indoors in Reykjavik. The site is of historical, cultural and geological significance and is one of the most popular tourist destinations in Iceland. The park lies in a rift valley that marks the crest of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge and the boundary between the North American and Eurasian tectonic plates. People come to stand with 1 foot nominally on each plate, so here's tourist Rosie doing just that. Sköllin historic guest house was then just a short hop, located on the popular Golden Circle route. But for our C19 tour, there were just 5 cars outside, so quite enough for the restaurant to close early at 8 PM before we got to eat. We ended up with instant noodles, a wrap and a yogurt drink from the local supermarket. The award-winning building was constructed in 1928 as a school, and the town of Lugavatin, Vatin meaning lake, was built around it. The school was redecorated in 2013 with mostly original furniture and pieces when it became a hotel. What impressed us was the sheer number of artefacts just there. Obviously the clientele were trusted to not take away souvenirs.
Day 6. Day 6 was our day to head into the centre of Iceland, and there were a couple of attractions on the way. We chose to visit Bráfoss waterfall, a very minor 3 metre high waterfall, and its smaller ones on the way, as it would stretch our legs on the 7-kilometre round trip. Some say it's one of Iceland's most attractive hidden waterfalls, due to the waterfall being fed from glacier melt, which gives it sky blue colour. Yep, yet another glacier fed sky blue river. Whilst the parking was on the N1 ring road, you'd have to know there was a walk to be had here. Strokkur geyser was disappointing. It may have erupted up to 40 metres sometime in the past, but looked more like 10 metres to us. Best part was trying to capture a selfie with the geyser erupting at the same time. Not successful. Gullfoss is the Golden Circle waterfall, but no coach parties when we arrived, just cars. The main fall is 32 metres, disappearing into the canyon which seems bottomless in the spray. In the early part of the 20th century, foreign investors rented the falls hoping to utilise it to generate electricity, but fortunately, due to lack of money, they were unsuccessful. Eventually the falls were sold to the Icelandic state and they became protected. After Gullfoss, we drove up the F35, the 170-kilometre highland road connecting southern and northern Iceland, known as Gjökulsárlón Road, the second longest highland road in Iceland, crossing the barren plateau at around 600 metres. It has no unbridged river crossings nowadays and is generally a smooth ride, allowing 80 kilometres per hour in parts. We stayed at the Jökulsárlón mountain centre. This was our most expensive place to eat, and the menu was the same on both days. We paid £43 on the first day for lamb and charfish, then £54 the next night for the same food but with potatoes. A 20-minute walk up the stream was a hot pot, originally drilled to provide heat, but it wasn't hot enough. It was hot enough for us though, and we had it to ourselves.
Day 7 was just around the corner, and why we stayed where we did. Just 6 kilometres from the mountain centre, on the roughest road we travelled on, was one of the largest and most fascinating geothermal hot springs in Iceland. Heydalur, the Valley of Hot Springs. It was absolutely photogenic. You can see from the photos and video how busy it was. Enjoy the scenery.
It's not called Iceland for no reason, you know. The rustic river crossing. How was that little walk?
Apart from one tiny scary bit, it was okay. Lots of climbing.
Day 8 saw us heading north for the next 120 kilometres on the F35, and one of just a few days on our tour where we had rain. Neil started off apprehensive as the previous day had seen the fuel range dropping 4 kilometres for every 1 kilometre travelled. However, the smoother road meant we travelled the 120 kilometres and the fuel range had gone up from 240 kilometres to 300 kilometres. Our next stop was Godafoss, right next to the road. Waterfall of the God. It's 12 metres high and 30 metres wide and was worth a stop. Viti overlooks Mývatn, Mosquito Lake, a very popular tourist area. This explosion crater was formed some 2,500 years ago. At 1 kilometre in diameter and 140 metres deep, it is apparently the biggest such crater in Europe. There are 2 paths up allowing you to walk the 3 kilometres around the crater rim and get views over both Lake Mývatn and the surrounding active volcanic area. Our accommodation in Mývatn was a garden shed facing the lake containing just the beds. As this was also a hostel, we also had use of a shared kitchen, so made use of this for our pasta and pizza meals.
For day 9 we stayed local to Mývatn. We took the scenic 848 and 842 gravel roads for the 70 kilometres to see the hidden waterfall Aldivoss and Rafnabargivoss. The roads served the local farms, and whilst we saw no traffic on the way out, later we saw a few vehicles obviously continuing south over multiple days on the F26, which is a serious highland road requiring serious river crossing experience. We had Aldivoss to ourselves. You can see the basalt columns next to the 20-metre falls. We started to walk the 3 kilometres to Rafnabardjavoss, passing a bonus waterfall of Ingvarvoss. But the almost absence of a path and the fragile nature of the terrain underfoot made us turn around and make the journey to Rafnabardjavoss by road. We drove 15 kilometres from Mývatn, right up to the rim of Viti crater, which was formed in 1724. In less time than it took me to eat an apple, we sat in the car, real touristy, and ate lunch. 18 out of 20 carloads got out of their car, walked the 20 metres to the viewpoint, where Rose is standing, took the obligatory photograph, walked back to the car, and left. We took the extra 10 minutes to walk around as much of the rim as was allowed. This is one of 8 areas on the North American Eurasian plates that still sees volcanic activity. Here it was as recent as 1984. This is the same mid-Atlantic ridge Rose stood astride at Thingvellir. With molten magma only 2.1 kilometres below the surface, in 1977 the building of the Krafla geothermal plant was started with 33 boreholes. It is considered to be Iceland's largest power station. You can see the pipes snaking across the hillside to the power plant. Down the hill is Námaskarð geothermal area. Not a patch on Heydalur area, but this was next to the road, so we took some photographs and played Where's Pink Bobble Gnome? I can't explain why this was next to the road, but we took the opportunity to wash part of the car. However, here's Rose doing it properly. Every garage had free car wash facilities.
Day 10 was based around whale watching from Húsavík, considered the whale watching capital of Iceland. Less than 50% of trips were running due to the lack of tourists. COVID-19 had caught up with Iceland, so we had to wear face coverings on the boat for the 3-hour trip. First sightings were within the first hour, and we followed a couple of humpback whales for a while, and then saw 3 breaches. Very cool. And I, Rosie, Attenborough, captured 2 of them. Asbyrgi Canyon was our next stop, 38 kilometres away. A glacial horseshoe-shaped canyon with a forest in the bottom. Look carefully and you can see people at a viewing platform at the top of the pond 100 metres below. We didn't read up on the walk, so didn't realise the walk required me to do a bit of scrambling, nor that the path only went to the end and not all the way round. There were 3 waterfalls in close proximity to each other on our way back to Mývatn, and we chose the 56-kilometre gravel road to reach them. The first waterfall was Gilsvoss. You can't actually get close to the falls, but we did hunt in the cloud for a path. You can just see the falls in the video. We then drove to Dettifoss, which is reputed to be the second most powerful waterfall in Europe, after the Rhine Falls in Switzerland. We should have then gone to Selfoss, but the dull weather the fact that it was approaching 8 p.m. and there was a 3-kilometre round-trip walk made us decide to skip.
Day 11 saw us moving to the far northeast of Iceland. Just 3% of Icelanders live in the east. First stop was Stuðlagil Canyon with its basalt columns, another hidden gem, with no signposting to suggest it was there. Off a gravel road, we park in what looked like to be just a farmer's field. A stilled staircase is being installed, presumably before it is more widely advertised. Like other visitors as arrived, we were perplexed by no path down to the river. We should have researched in advance, as that would have told us it involved an 8-kilometre round trip from a farm further down the river. Henkifoss, the third highest waterfall in Iceland, 128 metres. More basalt rock formations, but this time with red clay layers, and a sunny 2.5-kilometre uphill walk to reach it. The final approach to the waterfall seems to have been accessible recently, according to Mr. Google, but I scrambled as far as I could to get this footage. Our accommodation was in Borgarfjörður Estuary on the northeast coast. It's the end of a gravel road over a pass in the cloud with no barriers, which kept Rosie's speed down, way down. Only 100 people live here, but the area is getting a reputation as one of Iceland's best walking areas with coast and alpine-like mountains. Blabor Guest House was a converted community fish factory, finished as a boutique hotel. We really love this place. It was part of a cafe restaurant, which is where we ate. A great bonus were the hot tubs and saunas, which each room had for themselves for an hour due to social distancing restrictions. Speaking to the staff, they said last summer wasn't great as most tourists didn't venture this far, but with C-19 they were now very busy as many Icelanders were now discovering their own country.
Day 12. Just 15 kilometres from the guest house, at the top of the pass was the starting point for our 16-kilometre hike to visit the meadow, boulders and pool that is Strokkur, the giant boulders. An easy hike that starts off feeling a bit like Scotland, and then the Dolomites or Pyrenees with the jagged peaks and pass. We had lunch alone and then did the round of the boulders, getting slightly wet feet crossing the streams. We even filled in the visitor's book.
That's scary.
A little bit.
Day 13's plan was to start early, travel for 7 hours, visit lots of attractions on the way. The day started wet and dull and continued like that all day. Somewhere around the 200-kilometre mark, we hit a landslide, blocking the main N1 Icelandic ring road. The map shows where we did end up that night, and the green dot further west was where we had intended to finish. Don't think we'd have made it until gone midnight, so the landslide did us a favour. Having been told it could be 5 to 6 hours until the road was clear, and a 960-kilometre alternative diversion, the shortest possible route over the mountains, we retreated 25 kilometres to find a cafe. We hadn't even finished watching a film when the traffic website showed the road back open. We booked a news stop on booking.com as we drove along. This was a simple old farm brought by a retired nurse who lived in the area as a child. Here we met our first Brit on the tour, an amateur photographer on her 19th trip to Iceland. Dinner that night was 10 kilometres down the road in a restaurant attached to a museum.
Come Rosie, let me see a demonstration of a landslide. That's more like it. I think it's more like I don't know. The glacier melting. Come, let's see clear the road, come on. Got a couple of hours. Oh, it's come again. The road's blocked.
Day 14. In terms of the whole day, this was one of our best as we visited 10 attractions. Jökulsárlón Glacier Lagoon is the favourite place for everyone to visit on a tour of Iceland. But staying just 20 minutes away meant we were ahead of any wave that was coming. The landslide also meant we struck gold in visiting this day as the sun was out. The lagoon flows into the sea via a 300-metre outflow. In theory, the glacier could eventually carve enough icebergs to create a fjord. Even with it being summer, ice was flowing out to sea, and most then swept back onto Diamond Beach. It was magical to be the only ones on the beach. No one else's footprints or people in the photos. Jökulsárlón Glacier Lagoon is just a short distance further on, and less impressive. Svörtuloft Black Falls is a 20-metre waterfall in a national park. It was the inspiration for the church we'll see later in Reykjavik. It was probably our least favourite. After appearing in a Justin Bieber music video, the Stuðlagil Canyon became overwhelmed with visitors, so it was shut in 2019, but open again this year. There are a number of spurs sticking out which are both highly photogenic as well as dangerous. Not surprisingly, these are roped off. I can be seen in front of the one from the Bieber video. Reynisfjara black sand beach and more basalt columns, formed when lava cools down quickly. The columns weren't as black as we were expecting. Apparently in 1991, the beach appeared on the top 10 list of the most beautiful non-tropical beaches in the world. Probably been visited by 10 million people since then. It's also appeared in Game of Thrones and Star Wars. In the video, you see the basalt sea stacks, and the other way, the Deer Hollow sea arch. Hardly any pages on the internet for this small waterfall we spotted as we drove along the N1. Svörtuloft. We detoured to have lunch on the riverbed. Okay, another, one of the biggest, Sigöldugljufur forest waterfall. This was the sea cliff before the sea moved 3 kilometres south, and at 60 metres high and 25 metres wide, it is impressive and wet. There is a metal stairway to the top, which is also the start of the waterfall hike that takes you 25 kilometres north, past countless waterfalls and near the 2010 volcano eruption, the one that brought air travel to a halt. Last stop of the day, and another highlight, Kvernafos, 1 kilometre from Skoggafoss, but you'd need to know it was there as there were no signposts and you park in a museum's car park. Another up-close experience as you can walk behind the 30-metre fall. 4 other visitors, making this a hidden gem. At the end of a busy day, we eventually reached our accommodation, Hotel Lagoon, a converted farm.
A fantastic day 15 and Latmanaloya Goa. River crossings, a mountain walk, geothermals, a lava field formed in 1477 and multicoloured mountains.
I know, it's telling you to cross it here. Seems a bit deep.
No, it's shallower there. You can see the ripples.
We climbed Mount Blanuka, Blue Peak, at 940 metres. To Rosie, the edges were too close and too steep, and at one point she thought her trip of a lifetime was going to be the trip to end her lifetime. With only 400 metres of ascent, it was a steady walk, with a cold wind, but no rain to worry about.
There goes Rosie. And here comes the sunny weather.
The descent was a bit more precarious. We even read that others had exactly the same experience, asking, "This can't be the way, as surely they would have put in steps or a path to avoid walkers falling and the hillside being eroded away by walkers sliding down the scree."
How was that descent? How was the descent?
Scary, scary, scary.
Well, lunchtime beckons. This really is the main trail.
At the bottom, we took off our boots to wade the river. More painful
was
than
on
our
here.
previous experience, as we had no wet shoes.
That's another way of doing your boots, dear. You have to do them up. Follow the sticks, Pirate Rosie. Pirate Rosie. Don't follow the yellow ones, follow the white ones now. This should put you in the mood for a nice hot thermal down the bottom.
Again, we were so lucky as the rain has been forecast, but we avoided this all day whenever we were out of the car. We saw a track on our way out of Landmannalaugar, so followed it to the rim of this crater. Looks like we could have walked around it, but alas, so many sights and only so many hours in the day. Sigöldugljufur Canyon, Valley of the Tears. You have to know where to find the parking on the gravel road out of Landmannalaugar. Internet research said it was around the 24-kilometre mark. Even when you were 20 metres from the view in the photograph, you didn't know it was there. This canyon just has photographed me again and again, written all over it. And if we'd been real photographers, with no hot tub calling us, we'd have spent much longer here. As it's not in the I Spy Book of Iceland, there were no signs like all the other popular spots saying no drones. It would have made fantastic footage.
Day 16. Our final day in Iceland. Started with a 30-minute drive back to the east to visit Seljalandsfoss. Being only 90 minutes from Reykjavik, it's not surprising 500,000 visitors come to see this 60-metre waterfall in a normal year. Interestingly, Seljalandsfoss literally means selling the land of waterfalls in English. Whilst touted as Iceland's only waterfall you can walk behind, we know that's not true, as we'd been behind another one already. More exciting for us was to walk the 500 metres to the 40-metre Untitled Chapter, secret waterfall. With one way in and out via stepping stones, you can see why 500,000 visitors is not appropriate for this narrow canyon. Then on to park our car at our final guest house, just outside Reykjavik city centre. We downloaded a walking map and walked around the city centre. Hallgrímskirkja Church. Visible from everywhere in Reykjavik, this 75-metre Lutheran Church of Iceland took 41 years to build, finishing in 1986. Some say it was based on the waterfall you saw earlier.
And so ends our COVID-19 4,000 kilometre road trip of Iceland. We consider ourselves to have been so very fortunate to have visited a country that has rolled back decades in terms of foreign tourist levels due to COVID-19. Fortunate that we were well enough to travel. Fortunate that 9 days after our return, Iceland imposed mandatory quarantine on arrivals until they had a clear second COVID test on day 5. Whilst Iceland only expects highs of 14 degrees in summer, with sunshine for only 30% of the time, I think we were, yet again, fortunate. Never having to alter any plans because of the weather. Fortunate, given that the sunniest corner of Iceland, Reykjavik, is one of the cloudiest and coolest capitals of any nation in the world. We hope you have enjoyed watching. We certainly had a fantastic experience. Roll on the next road trip.